Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wingcat Sports, and it's another NFC North breakdown. Not that bad of a week for the division again. Besides, again, the Bears. Uh, so we'll start with the Sunday game, and then we'll talk about the Thursday games. Close one for the Vikings, winning 23-22 against the Cardinals. Like I said, this was one of the ones I was questionable on if they can make it out. I think this is showing the Vikings' strength that they're not that great of a team compared to their record. Um, but they're still fighting. They're still getting by. Sam Darnold is doing good. He threw for 235 yards, 2 TDs, 21 for 31. They also ran for a total of 68 yards. So they didn't even use the rushing game this game.
Yeah, it was disappointing. I mean, I was like the Cardinals at the end. I felt they should have went for it. I thought they should have just said to hell with it. Let's go for a touchdown instead of a field goal at the end. That would have put the game out of reach. You wouldn't have been able to come back. Um, but they didn't, and they gave the Vikings a chance to come down and win, and
Yep.
they did. Like I said, if you give them a chance, chances are they will. I just thought they had an opportunity there. Yeah, it would have been kind of probably
But looking
unconventional,
at it,
but
it was an interception to end the game, basically. Um,
yeah,
it
it's just like this.
wasn't. Again, I'm not that confident with the Vikings. Obviously, they're going to be that number 2 team behind us until they basically lose, and then we're also fighting the Packers. But overall, the Vikings are still showing that they are someone that you have to watch out for. I'm just not as worried with Minnesota.
Well, eventually they're going to beat us. I mean, we've beaten them a few times in a row now. Like everybody in the division, we pretty much dominated our division, and but we're not going to beat them every time we play them. It's a dangerous game to play. I don't want to face them for the division at the end of the year. I really wouldn't want to do that. Uh,
I think you would clinch it before that game.
I hope so.
You would have to,
I would
unless you
so.
lose.
But we play a much tougher schedule.
It might be for the
And
division if
we
you
are.
lose.
I mean, we're heading into a stretch here where we play, 5 tough games. Even
Well,
the Bear game is going to be tough. We're playing that at Soldier Field in cold weather, and we're barely surviving right now, injury wise. I mean, we are depleted as well as maybe I don't know the injury situation with everybody else,
But we'll move on to the Packers game off the Vikings game. Packers having an easy time on Thanksgiving night, winning 30-17 over the Miami Dolphins, which again kind of was expected. I thought it might be closer, but Chua did not go down easily though. He threw for 365 yards, 2 TDs. Problem is, what can you not do in cold weather? Apparently, if you are Miami, is run the ball. They only ran for 39 yards total on the day in that cold, frigid Packer night. But the Packers, they played well. Jordan Love was 21 for 28, 274 yards, 2 TDs. They ran for another 114 yards, had no problems. Packers are still looking good. They're keeping themselves in the division race, doing the best they can to be still a problem for the Lions.
right? They will be too. It looks like we're going to have 3 teams in the playoffs in our division, and
You're going to have 3 teams with 10, maybe 11 plus wins too.
Right. We'll probably have to face one of these teams 3 times. And see what happens. I think the Packers, like I said, the Jordan Love is getting better. The running game is coming into its own with Josh Jacobs. They're a well balanced team. So I mean, I
said they had no fight on Thanksgiving.
Formidable opponent for us. So it's just like I said, and we'll see what happens. We play them Thursday. So
I said you play them this week, but we'll get into that. But good game by the Packers. They're going to be fighting. They don't have as tough of a schedule, and it's going to be a little bit of a problem for the Lions. And then we're moving on to the game of the week. I will say from Thanksgiving, Lions barely beating the Bears 23-20. It's a division game. Anything can happen, and Bears just found another way to lose. Of the multiple different ways they've lost this year. Poor coaching decisions. You had the timeout. Is it the coach's fault? Is it the quarterback's fault? Doesn't matter now. They fired their coach the next day. Matt Eberflus is finally out in Chicago. They're going to be hunting after the Lions coordinators to be their coach next year, most likely. But Lions still get the 23-20 wins. Caleb Williams did not look bad in the second half. And overall, the Lions didn't do well in the second half like they typically do.
No, no, like I said, it wasn't a great Lions win or anything by that matter, but the Lions are efficient, and they I don't think, like I said, the Bears had to scramble to get back in that game. They did. They played much better in the second half. Um,
They just
and
didn't
again,
run
at
the
the
ball.
end, it's
That was their problem.
I can't explain why they didn't call a timeout in the last 35 seconds, why they let the clock run down, why they called that play.
Is it the QB? Is it the coach?
I think it's a combination of both. I think
if you're the coach, you should have called a timeout the second they hit 10 seconds.
I I
But
agree.
if
I
you're the
don't
quarterback,
understand.
but
The
if you're
corner
Caleb Williams, why are you letting it get that low without
right. A coach can
just hiking it?
the timeout is on the coach. I would
Timeout's on the coach, but why didn't he? Caleb Williams also needs to pay attention to how much time's left. He'll also make a decision there. But he's young, he's learning. That's what's going to happen.
right.
But the Bears did not play bad at all. They played well in all three of their division games. Again, division games, it doesn't matter how bad the other team is. You got to remember, we got our first win 3-4 years ago against the Vikings when we were like 0-12 and whatever.
Right.
So, or it was like 0-11-1 and 1 or something like that, and you beat the Vikings. Anything can happen with the division game, no matter what it is.
Right.
So the fact that you still beat the Bears, that's good. You're 11-1, first time in franchise history. You've been 11-1, breaking records still. Now you're hunting for the best record that you've had as a franchise, which will be 13 wins, which I think is still possible. But injuries. That keeps on happening to our secondary. Rodriguez is now out for the year with an ACL tear. And you have made some practice squad moves to try and get better. Jamal Adams is now on the team, and a couple other notable practice squad additions.
Right. Next man up kind of thing. And it is what it is. You can't control injuries. You can't control health. That's often what derails you. Look at the 49ers. It's going to be something we're going to have to keep our eye on, and hopefully it doesn't derail us. At the moment, our offense is pretty intact. I mean, we have Decker. Is he coming back?
Decker should be back this week. I would not be surprised.
Okay. So,
but for the most part, your offense is good. Your defense battered. But it will be interesting to see what happens against a good Packers team this week as we'll go look ahead to our games.
Luckily, we are playing them at home. We're playing the Packers and the Vikings
so,
at home.
Let's look at our next 5 or remaining of the season. We got 5 games left in the season. Let's look at the 5 for all the teams. Lions and Packers play each other this week on Thursday Night Football. Should be a good game. Lions are still favored by 3.5. Over under is 51.5. So they're expecting like a 28-24 game to happen. It should be a good game though. We'll see what ends up happening. And then they stay at home. Long week of rest for them to play the Bills, one of the best teams in the AFC right now. Then you're going to go to Chicago and play the Bears, go to San Francisco, play the 49ers on Monday Night Football, and then come home to play the Vikings at the end of the year. I still see 3 wins at least on the schedule, but it's not going to be easy.
No, it's getting harder and harder with each week. If the 2 wins are Green Bay and Minnesota, I'll feel better about it. But I feel the same way you do. I it's either going to be 2-3 or 3-2 down the stretch.
It's not going to be easy, especially with how your defense is battered. I would even say Green Bay has more of the advantage in the upcoming game. But Green Bay, you can still beat them. Buffalo will be your toughest game remaining on your schedule. Chicago against the Bears. You just saw how you played against them at home. Kind of makes me a little bit more worried away. Again, it's going to be cold. And now how close that game was, we'll see how that goes. 49ers is probably the one I'm least concerned about, surprisingly. Christian McCaffrey tearing his ACL again. Or PCL. Looked like Achilles ruptured. But we'll see what ends up happening there. But that's the one I'm least concerned about. Surprisingly, the 49ers still all banged up, 5-7 right now. And then you got your last home game against the Vikings.
Yep. Like I said, the games against the division are all going to be tough. And I think the Bills game is going to be super tough. The Bills, I think, is going to be a loss. I can't see us beating them. not in our present state. Is it at home?
It's at home.
Well, that might be a chance.
It's at home. Your last 5 games, 3 are at home. Your 3 at home are against the better teams, the Packers, Bills, and Vikings. Your away games are against the Bears and 49ers.
Okay.
So that's your advantage. All your really good teams you're facing that have 10 plus wins are at home. So we'll see how that ends up going. Since I'm right next to it, we'll look at the Bears' upcoming schedule. We've already talked about it week after week. Not good for the Bears. But hey, this week might be good for them. They're going to be playing the 49ers, a struggling 49ers team now without Christian McCaffrey. They might have an advantage with this game. San Francisco's favored by 3.5. We'll see what ends up happening with Chicago. I could see them pulling out a win. But also at the same time, Chicago's been losing.
Right.
And losing. They also are going to play Minnesota in Minnesota. Then they're going to play the Lions at home. Then they play the Seahawks at home on Thursday Night Football, short week. And then they have a long rest in going into Lambeau.
Can be tough.
So
Tough.
I don't know if
game's
they
tough.
can win their next 5, but they can at least win 1 out of the next 5, I will say. Maybe 2.
I think they could. Right. I mean, every week it's just like what's going to show up. Eventually, the Bears are going to break through. But I think right now, like I said, with firing their coach, that'll help. I guess. I don't know who's the interim right now.
Their offensive coordinator.
So yeah, I wouldn't expect much the rest.
Who is a top candidate to be their head coach next year? So this is his interview basically for the job. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Looking at the Packers schedule, I honestly think it's pretty favorable for them. We'll see what ends up happening. Like we talked about, early game this week, Thursday Night Football. They do get a week break against the Lions in Detroit. Then they're going to go to Seattle for Sunday Night Football. So that would be another good game. Seattle's fighting for their playoff lives. Then they're going to come home and play the Saints. Probably a win for them. Going to go to Minnesota. Will be another tough game for the Packers. And then they end the year against Green Bay. Or not Green, the Bears. We'll see what ends up happening. Bears haven't beaten them in like 4 or 5 years. And I doubt it's going to happen at Lambeau.
Right. Well, like,
so what I'm seeing is 5 games. I'm seeing at least 4 wins. That puts the Packers at 13 wins on the year.
Yeah.
13-4 is what I'm saying.
That's going to put them right where we're at. So
13-4.
That's why it's important we beat them.
Minnesota. Let's see what we have left for Minnesota. Minnesota, they are going to be playing the Atlanta Falcons this week on Sunday. Kirk Cousins' return.
That'll be.
They're going to then play the Bears, the Seahawks in Seattle, then the Packers at home, and then the Lions away.
So this is their tough part of their schedule.
So they don't have the easiest one. I think Kirk Cousins and the Falcons could come in and easily beat.
Easily? Really?
The Vikings. I think there's going to be a lot of motivation. I think it's still going to be a close game, but I could see it happening. Overall, though, I see at least 3 more wins for the Vikings on their schedule. At least 3 more, which puts them at 13-4 as well.
I don't see 3. I think they're going to go into a little tailspin here, but yeah, maybe.
I see at least 3.
Both these teams could end up with 13 wins.
13-4 could be an ending record for the Vikings. Lions wise, you could be ending at still 16-1, but not going to likely happen. I expect maybe 15-2, 14-3 for the Lions.
Well, like I said, it's going to come down to the wire, I think. 14 wins, I think, would be great. I mean, you can't argue with that.
Even if you're a wild card team and you're
right. I mean, you can't
14
argue
wins.
with that. You win 13, 14 games in this league, it's tough. That's saying a lot. You just got to say, hey, we did the best we could. Hopefully that'll be enough to win the division and get them a bye.
Hopefully. I think whoever wins the North is going to get the bye. But with also, if you want to just look at it for a division standing, right? Whoever wins our division is kind of fighting for the bye with the Eagles, who won this week, just so we can kind of look at who the Eagles have coming up. They got the Panthers this week. That's a win for the Eagles very easily. Panthers at home. Then they play the Steelers, which could be a loss for them. Commanders in Washington, which could be a loss for them. At home against Dallas and at home against the Giants. Eagles at least have 3 wins on their schedule remaining. They're at least going to be 13-4 as well. And that's saying something. You're going to have some really good teams in the NFC in the playoffs. But with all that being said, if you like what you see, like, comment, subscribe, share the video around. Let me know what you think about the division down in the comments. It's close. We'll see what ends up happening. And until next time, see everybody soon.